Hello everybody and welcome back to Reaper Pro Tips with me, your host, Anne, disembodied hands, Quindy, absentee voters, Justin and John. And Kiki's totally distracted right now, and you might also hear a little tiny bit of noise because our new tree is going in, so he's dismantling the lime tree with a chainsaw right now. So that won't last for long. It should be pretty quick. So if you hear a little bit of in the background, that's the chainsaw. And it will not last very long. But I had to talk to him. I'm late because I had to talk to him. He actually asked me about some stuff at the last minute, so had to actually... Hi, Kiki. Do you want to say hi to the stream? Here, come here. Up, up. Yay! There's our Keekster. The lime tree is dying, Pendrake. It's like slowly, like it got diseased. It's a very unhappy tree right now. I do not feel bad putting it out of its misery, and we're replacing it with a Japanese maple, which I love. I had Japanese maples when I did bonsai. It's a Keeker. Keeker came in with her giant snout. Hi, giant snout dog. Giant snout dog. This camera does not flatter you, my dear. Yes, it doesn't, but I love you anyway. Yes, I love you anyway. Good girl. All right, Keekers, you want to go watch the guy do the stuff? Yeah. All right, you supervise, okay? Good girl. I want you to supervise and bark if he does anything sus. Kiki's going to supervise. Ugh. She's a good girl. When she is a good girl. Man, I haven't even thought about these models. I don't even know what we're doing today. So this is going to be I got totally distracted by the tree business because I wasn't expecting him till the afternoon. Oh, dearie me. So yeah, but the tree is beautiful. The maple tree that's going in is beautiful. And I just feel sad whenever I look at the lime tree because it's just so sad. It's so diseased. It's so old. Our realtor warned us when we moved in. He took one look at the lime tree and he's like, yeah, that's a really old tree and it's probably not going to last very long. It does so flatter. It makes her snoot look totally huge. It makes her snoot look big, Papa. Oh, I probably should have given her an extra chew. Well, she'll just deal. She got dog TV to watch. All right, so we were doing some stippling on the base of our Terezinya, so we'll do that. By the way, look at how tall she is next to this guy. Like he's shrinky dink. He's like so shrinky dink next to her. Look at her. Like he is not very menacing when you look at him next to Terezinya. Terezinya is like super like 6 foot model, runway model type. Yeah, I love Japanese maples so much. Yeah, I love our lemon tree. Our lemon tree is very, very vibrant and healthy. It's a younger tree and it's in good health, and I hope it stays that way for a while because it saves us a lot of money on lemons because I make homemade lemon vinaigrette dressing all the time. Like, that's pretty much the dressing we keep on hand for everything, so. Oh, Cranston. All right, we're gonna mix up some. Mix up some colors. That's right. I was doing some black indigo, and then I was doing some lighter bone color because I was still using the colors that we had on this model to do the gray and stuff. So we were doing black indigo and this bone color, which neutralized each other very well into a gray. Oh, cool. Yeah, birds. Yeah, that's one other thing I want to do. I want to get a bird feeder for the lemon tree because the lemon tree has thick enough limbs. And I think I can and then I can watch, because I'm always working at the table there, and we've got huge windows, and I can just watch the birds while I'm working, which would be awesome. That would be awesome. Actually, the cutest thing happened the other day, Kerniko. We have a lot of little songbirds and tiny little wrens and stuff around here, and the fountain was running and a little wren came and I was like, oh no, because the birds usually don't like it when the fountain is moving. Like sometimes they'll come over if the fountain is quiet, if I've turned it off. But this little bird came right over with the moving fountain and just sat on the rim of one of the pore ridges, and he just took a bath. Right above where the fountain was pouring into the thing. It was really cute. It was so cute. He was happy. He was taking a little bath. I love watching birds. So at least one bird was brave enough to use the fountain as a bird bath. So yeah, so hopefully more will follow, because that's my favorite thing. I love watching the birds when they're eating and they're taking their baths. And then he sat up in the lemon tree and like did his bird thing to dry off. It was really cute. Tiny little bird, tiny little bird. Oh no, Twistnoma, it's got to be your internet. My internet looked okay for once. Cat food order. Yeah, I had my big dog food order the other day. Unapologetic bird nerd. I really like birds. I'm not an expert, but I do really enjoy them. And Texas had awesome birds, I gotta say. All right, so I'm gonna mix up a couple of grays here from my bone color and my black indigo. Texas had some really awesome birds. Although I have seen a couple of swallows around here recently. And Texas is just tons of swallows because, of course, there's bugs everywhere. And I'm going to get even more warm color and do that stippling. So I'm just getting my nod bone all set up so I can mix the black indigo into it. Oh, and we're crooked again. I'm always crooked these days. Why am I so crooked? All right, there we go. Okay. I'm going to need to order a whole nother thing, a whole nother gloom and grave to get another nod bone at this rate. Okay, yes, there we go. I want water, and I want to get this down here where we can see it. So I just mixed up a puddle of black indigo and a puddle of the nod bone, and I'm just going to take some of that black indigo and move it over. And then move a little bit more over. And take a look at my stone color, which is you can see now how indigo the stone color is. But when you just look at it without looking at the palette, it looks just fine. So we know we need a little bit more indigo, and I need my water. Oh no. Yeah, Texas, yeah. Yeah, Texas gets the cool stuff. Although I do love our brush jay, our big blue bird. I haven't seen him for a little while. But we have a lot of really cute, tiny little birds that hunt the bugs on the tree limbs and stuff, that just peck off ants and stuff. And we do have bluebirds around here, and we've got a bunch of little colorful songbirds. There was an epidemic that roared through that kind of really depleted the songbird population in the Bay Area, but I think they're recovering from it. And I thought I saw a mockingbird the other day, just like the ones I used to see in Texas. The markings were similar, but I guess there's a cowbird that looks a lot like a mockingbird, so I don't know. All right, so I'm just trying to get closer so I can touch up stone, but at the same time, it's not important that I get exactly there because it's just gray, it's rocks. So if it's not a perfect match, it's just gonna look organic. That's about right though, and then I'm gonna just mix a little bit of that into here. The beige gray is more like what I want to use for a highlight because it's warmer. There we go. So kind of almost a desert sand kind of color. Maybe just a little bit more gray. That's good. So I'll mix that in, and that'll bring in a warmer tone, and it'll keep the gray from looking too blue in the end. I'm going to put some water into my black indigo, but I'm not going to mix it up because I don't know how I'm going to want it. Yeah, we do have hummingbirds. Kiki like met a hummingbird. I told you guys that a while ago. The hummingbird was very curious about Kiki, and Kiki was super curious about the hummingbird. But yeah, we have some hummingbird flowers, so I have seen one in our yard before. Apparently we need to move our avocado tree. This is going to cost money. Like, I'm going to have to talk to David about it tonight. I thought they could keep it trimmed down, but Jesus says that actually really doesn't work with avocados. Jesus is our gardener. And he is a knowledgeable man, so I'm going to take him at his word. And try to sell David on moving our avocado tree to the front yard and our little orange tree to the backyard. Yeah, that's what hit. It was like a virus or something that hit our songbird population super hard, like during the pandemic. That's why I didn't get a bird bath, is people were the bird people were telling people not to, if you kept a bird bath, you had to wash it every day and stuff like that. The avocado tree, yeah, it's close to the house, and it's also like it's just gonna, it's gonna get really big, and it's going to be just too. Our neighbor, or not our neighbor, the previous homeowner planted it, and obviously didn't like think too hard, because like although the tree grows past the house, going straight up past the top, we've got kind of a pergola over our deck, but it's barely. And so the minute that tree gets big at all, it's going to branches are going to be heading toward the house and everything like that. So yeah, Pendrake, that's kind of the crux of it. I had hoped we could keep it trimmed, but that apparently is not a thing for avocados. So we'll have to consider. And I'm going to do a little bit of a edge lining here. I'm just going to paint it. But that can make stonework look nice when you put that little line in there. It kind of crisps it up. You can use a stippling stroke if you want, but at 28 you really don't need to. It'll suggest that the edges are worn essentially. So you could just edge light them and then add a little bit of. Oh, Kiki, really? Is he taking all your branches away? He trimmed our lemon tree down to the level of the house, because the lemon tree's out on that side of the house too. And all the sticks, all the branches, fell. Kiki just sat and fascinated, just watched him cut every little branch and put it on the ground. She's like, sticks! And now she's probably barking because he's taking the sticks away. Oh my god. Oh no, silly kitty. But yeah, the other thing is that having the orange tree in the front of the house, the front of the house is more deserty landscaping, and I don't think it gets enough water. Like, I have to always drag water out to it, and it wasn't doing too well last year because of it. It wasn't getting enough. So when it's close to the house, on that side, those sprinklers are on the hedges and the lemon tree, so they give a little more water. I think the orange tree would do better here. Plus, people steal the fruit out on the front of the house because they can. So I would kind of like some oranges at some point. So yeah, but that's going to be really labor intensive, and he's going to have to bring a team for it. So it's going to be more costly to do than today's takeout and plant. Yeah, Papa, he's taking our lime tree away. I'm sorry that you can't have the branches. So I'm just going to do a little bit of edge here. And like I said, if I want to break up this edge highlighting, I could just stipple. And I was planning on stippling anyway and already have over here. So that'll help to break it up so it isn't so artificial looking when you've got just that line. Although if you're painting in a very stylistic way, then you can get away with the line. Like Kaha could totally get away with the line because she paints a very streaky, very stylistic, right? For a lot of her stuff, she likes to do that kind of unnatural pattern. Yeah. Yeah, we don't freeze. I mean, okay, we do get some freezes overnight. It's rarer. We won't have a prolonged freeze though, like you would do in Texas, in some areas of Texas. Our weather's typically mild in the winter, and our fruit trees have always been fine in it. Like, they don't love it when it gets to the 40s during the day and drops to freezing at night, but it's fairly temporary. So they managed to stick it out, I think. But yeah, we don't have any like hard prolonged cold like I did in Texas. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah, that's what we were thinking. That's what he was thinking is and of course the previous owner didn't like consult Jesus before he put the tree in. He just decided he wanted an avocado tree and planted it, which sometimes works out and yeah, sometimes it doesn't. So we'll just hope our tax return gets here sooner rather than later. Um, Alcohol-based inks. So you mean I don't know. Okay. Let's talk about this. All right, so there are lacquer-based inks. But they're still water-based. I don't know that I've seen any solvent-based inks. So if there is I guess alcohol could be considered water soluble. I'm a little confused by your terminology, Tarzan. So, because the only inks, quote unquote inks, that I know of are not solvent based, and they're not really alcohol based. It's a lacquer that they're in. It's just not an alcohol base, last I checked, but I could be wrong. So do you have a brand you could, if you're saying alcohol-based inks, like, is there a brand out there that I can look up? Because essentially what you've got, Tarzan, with quote-unquote inks, and actually if you are on my Patreon, you can look it up with the terminology PDF I just put out for the $2 tier. But essentially, you have two kinds of quote unquote inks. Yeah, and there's my thing. So there's artist inks, which are the old school kind, and they're kind of smelly. So when you open them up, they definitely don't smell like traditional paint. Those are usually a lacquer base or something akin to it chemically. What are you doing, Doglet? She's ridiculous. Oh, she's pawing the door because she wants to get out there and eat the sticks. I was like, what's that noise? So you've got those traditional artist inks, and those are still out there. You can get them there for fountain pens and stuff. You can get them at Hobby Lobby. There's the Winsor Newton version. There's a bunch of others. Those inks are dyes. They are fully soluble in their base, and that means if you use them on miniatures and then you try to paint over them, the dye will reactivate, and it will essentially bleed through. Then there are artist inks, the acrylic inks, quote unquote. Those are actually just heavy washes or thinned paint, depending on what you want to call them. They're usually in a heavy acrylic water-soluble base, and they are pigments. They are not dyes. They will not reactivate. They are not fully soluble. They are always particulate. So they're really just a super fine pigment in a fluid base. Oh, Jacquard. Okay, so I bet that's an artist ink. Hold on. Because Jacquard is very much a... 1 second. Let me look them up. But I'm willing to bet you those are traditional. Got it. All right, yeah. Yeah, so they're rewettable. They are dye-based. Yep. Yeah. So I went straight to the product page. So what this really is, this is technically an art product, but it's not going to be great on miniatures because it's going to reactivate. Although it might not reactivate with water, being, but it's dyes. Okay. Here we go. Pinata colors are highly saturated, fast-drying alcohol inks for any hard surface, including glass and metal. So you can paint straight onto glass and metal with these. Plastic, ceramic, stone, leather, resin, etc. It's impervious to water, so that's good. They do clean up with alcohol. They will re-wet themselves with alcohol. So if you're trying to paint over the top of one with another, it will bleed through. Yeah, you can do interesting things, I guess. It sounds like a titchy medium. It's a dye-based, highly transparent ink. Light fast, the most light fast. So it's not absolutely light fast. It's acid-free. And it's specifically for non-porous surfaces. So miniatures, one would say, could be used. Okay, so you could use these on minis. You're going to have to work with solvents to clean your brushes, and you're going to want to probably, because it is solvent-based, it's going to have just the same problems you come with any solvent base. They're not non-toxic. You're going to have to use some sort of odorless mineral spirits or turpentine to clean your brushes. They're going to be hard on natural hair brushes, so you probably want to choose pretty throwaway brushes for them. They're not. Well, the Tamiya is a little weird. The Tamiya Clear is the weirdest, like, really annoying. They're really annoying. They're annoying because they say they're acrylic Shadow Raven, but then they want you to buy their thinner. I'm not a Tamiya Clears fan. I had them a while ago. They're great for doing stained glass, but they're such a titchy product, and I don't like any product that I can't clean up with soap and water. So I am definitely biased on that. So I just don't like solvents. I hate the stink of the quote unquote odorless mineral spirits. I hate that I can't use soap and water. I hate that they wreck my brushes, so I can't use my natural hair brushes. Or shouldn't if they're not throwaway and already half dead. So what it sounds like, okay, could you do cool effects with these? Yeah, it sounds like you can. Because you can essentially blend them over with each other over the top of, like, straight over metal. It doesn't even say you need primer. It says it works on glass. If it works on glass, then yeah, you could get some really cool effects. But you're gonna have to learn how to use it. It's good that they're a dye that doesn't bleed because the alcohol base fixes them. But you can sometimes get staining with those. Okay, so what dyes also do is they stain. So if you don't apply them perfectly smooth, in a perfectly smooth layer, you can get staining around the edges and you can get irregularities. Advanced. I would say advanced Tarzan. That is an advanced product. You would have to learn. First of all, you should never, okay, people hate it when I say this, but you shouldn't buy a product just to buy a product. If you have something in mind that you want to try and those sound like they absolutely fit the bill, pick them up. Like if you want to do stained glass, those sound like they might be great for doing a stained glass effect. Perfect, in fact. You might be able to do a really realistic stained glass with them. But if that's a really expensive buy just for doing like one project. So maybe buy one color, mess around with it. See if it's anything you can, maybe you'll come up with new ways to use it. But it's going to be more advanced and you are going to need solvents. You are going to need odorless mineral spirits or something of the sort to work with them since they are not water-based. So if you don't have that already, if you've already got oil paints, you've got everything you need. If you don't have oil paints, then keep in mind there are things you have to worry about with using solvents. Like you shouldn't like just use a rag to clean up and saturate it with oil and crap because spontaneous combustion is actually a thing. Stuff like that. You can look into that and read it on your own, but I mean, just be careful and read up and make sure you understand what not to do. So yeah, essentially it's like you're going to need the same equipment as you would need if you were going into oil paints. So if you were thinking of getting into oil paints, you could also mess around with those inks. Thanks for the tell. Obviously, this is going to be the new fad. I hate to say that. Gosh, I'm such an old, like, ornery person today. I'm such a curmudgeon today. Oh my God, Quindy, help me. I am though, but okay, the first thing that runs into my mind when I read about a product like this, and it's the first time I've heard of it, and then I go read about it, is that everybody and their dog is going to be playing with these now and promoting it as the next hot thing. Like, so you should always question mark. Question the premise, folks. Question the premise, please. Don't hear about the new hot thing and go, oh, that sounds cool, and spend a bunch of money that you could use on minis, you know, buying the thing, and then realizing that the thing has a really hard learning curve and that you need even more stuff to use it, right? I worry about you guys because I worry about me. Because it's so easy to impulse. And what I always do now is I put the thing in my shopping cart and then I let it sit there for several days. And after my like, new thing wears off, then I really ask myself, do I really need this? Am I really going to use this? And if I'm still excited about it and I have a project in mind that I think it would be perfect for, maybe I'll pick up one or two of them to try out. I think, oh man, yeah, you can do that with regular acrylic inks. Okay, so tinting though is another weird word. Tinting means to mix white into a color, Tarzan, so maybe that's not what you mean. If you meant like getting a little bit of like a color, like a hint of another color over your NMM, like, yeah, you could do that with glazes. And you could do that with acrylic inks glazes. Yeah, the one thing that inks can be good for is shading metallics. Oh, God. And that's the biggest lie of all, is that this thing will make it so much easier for you to be a better painter. And everybody throws that one around. And it's a lie. It's totally a lie, guys. The only thing that makes you a better painter is painting. Thanks, Lethal. Thank you. Yeah, sorry, I was just ranting. Ignore the curmudgeonly woman who was just on the stream. But I hate fads like this. I hate when the new hot product, quote unquote, like in the art world comes along, some famous painter will grab it and do an amazing effect with it. Like, absolutely, hands down, that's going to happen if it hasn't happened already. But then it just spreads. Like, everybody starts buying it. Like, it's like the blackest black. It's like a fad. It's like, what is that actually useful for? It's really not useful. You know, so we all rant from time to time. So I hate the fad thing in miniature painting because painters are led to believe that this is going to make it easy for them to get amazing effects and that their painting will level up. And it's like, no product does that for you. Okay, one exception, Kolinsky Sable brushes. They will level you up. But anything else, there's a learning curve, right? Like, could you take alcohol-based inks and learn to do some amazing effects? Sure you could. It's going to take a lot of time. Do you have the patience? Do you have the time? Do you have a project in mind that actually would use that effect? For me, to use a new product, I need to actually have creative energy. I need to have the creative energy and the interest and the focus, the idea of how I want to use it. So I will sit down and mess with it and see what I can do. On occasion, I'll just mess with stuff that I have just to see, you know, if it was cheap, maybe I'll pick up a bottle and I'll mess with it one night when I actually have energy. But yeah, you could actually, that would be great. So that if you're trying to do the hot effect, Tarzan, you could use those. However, Kirill himself, the man, top 3 painters in the world, has actually remarked to me upon using the Reaper colored metallics that he was able to get a really good color, that kind of colored metal sheen. He just used the red, the orange, the gold, the green, the blue, the purple. Like, he just used our colored metallics range and he made heat colored metal. So you could just use colored metallics to do the same thing. Yeah. If you want to impulse buy some stuff, I know a great place. Thank you, Quindy. Shameless product plug. Hold on. I missed a stuff. Yeah, you picked up the Tamiya's because you're working on plastic and needed clears. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes, it's a pita to work with, right? And could you do it with something else? Probably. Probably. Yeah, I mean, Kirill just, that's why I made those colored metallics. I mean, other than for dragons, because if you want to put a little bit of metallic sheen on your dragon scales, that's really what those are very good for that, guys. Just so you know, just saying. But yeah, I had actually never thought of them until that moment. Like I had thought you might use like the copper and the red as like, you know, you could use that to shade copper, but yeah, if you want that heated metal, like where it goes kind of rainbowy, Kirill used it on a warjack he was working on around the vents to, and he was actually really happy with it. So it was a present for a really good friend of his. So I remember that, and I made a mental note of it. So there you go. So yes, you could use those alcohol things. Yes, they would be far more of a learning curve for you. And if you did decide to invest in them and try it, like if you're not happy, if you get a couple of the Reaper Metallics and you start it and you're like, well, this isn't really what I wanted, and you end up picking up those alcohol ones, make sure you test them on something that isn't your model. Try to get the effect on just a normal surface and then go and do it on your model. Like, just like paint, grab a throwaway mini or something. Yeah. Volnavia, we have a Timbits equivalent if you want the color. If they don't make it, I can't believe they wouldn't make it with the Timbits. But Scorched Metal 9125 and MSP is a Timbits equivalent because I always loved Timbits. It was one of my favorite colors. So one of the first things I did was steal it. The life of a paint manufacturer. Papa, did he take away all your sticks? Oh, Inara. I'm sorry. We all want our dopamine hits. Resin, we just talked about alcohol inks, and I just ranted about them. And I just said, quote unquote, this is gonna be the new fad. All right. So, just to recap, Resin, if you have the equipment to use oil paints already, you're set up. You're good. Go for it. Play with your resin inks. Remember, they'll reactivate each other because that's the way they're made to be. So it's going to be a little bit, yeah. It's going to be a little bit, it's cool, but it's going to be a learning curve. Definitely. Could you get some cool effects with them? Sure. If you accidentally bought some, then you may as well mess around with them, assuming you've got oil painting gear. If you don't have oil painting gear, then you need to actually get, you know, your odorless mineral spirits, some brushes that you really don't care about, you know, maybe a glass palette, or if you've got a ceramic one, that'll work. Something you can essentially wipe off or throw away paper pellets, but you know, whatever. And you're going to need rags. You're going to need stuff. As somebody who just picked up oil painting on miniatures again last year, you're going to need some stuff. And there is going to be a learning curve to using them. You probably could, anything that's solvent based will reactivate them. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, I assume you can paint acrylic water-based products over the top because it says it's impervious to water. I don't know if it's going to bead up on them. Like, I don't know what kind of surface they've got or if they're water-phobic. Okay. Got it. Yep. Okay. Well, have you ever worked with oils before, Resin? That's one question I have for you. Okay. Learning curve. Yeah, there's going to be a learning curve. Pick a simple model that you don't care, like get an academic bust or something that you just don't care that much about. Something simple. Oils excel at blending, obviously. You have a long time to blend, but they're also, you need to watch your blending because it's very easy to get very easy to get muddy when you're blending with oils. So learning some color theory, color mixing, play with your oils a lot before you start painting on something that you care about. And those inks, they're going to take some work. You could paint them straight on and then, layer them up. You're probably going to want a ground color beneath that. You're going to make sure you want to put, if you want a smooth coat on a surface, you're going to have to cover it probably all at once, I want to think. It's going to be hard to get an even coat. Unless you do, but I haven't played with them, so maybe they'll be easier than I think. Bottom line is, you are headed for a learning curve. Make sure that you tackle it when you're rested, when you have energy, because painting with oils can be very frustrating. It makes some things easier, makes blending easier, but getting the details isn't necessarily as easy, right? And you have to wait a long time for it to set up. Well, right, Alquos. James had like 3 decades as a canvas oils painter before he transitioned to miniatures. Like, he's an expert level. He is what is the highest level? Level 20? James is a level 21 oil painter. Like, so, yes, he makes it look easy and he sells to a lot of people on oils. And you can watch his streams and learn a lot. But again, it's going to be an investment of your time and energy, right? So my worry is always that people get into these things not understanding how much time and energy it's really going to take to get good at it. Although you could certainly play with it and maybe luck into a fun effect. You just never know. So keep an open mind, but yeah. He does make it look easy. Yeah, James does make it look easy. Yep. And I mean, I make acrylics look easy on this stream, right? Because I'm just so used to it. I know what paint consistency I need. I know how much thinning I need. I know, I can just dip my brush in the water and add a little paint, and I know that I've got the consistency I want because I've been painting competition level miniatures for over 20 years at this point, right? So, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I went back here. Let me grab my oils model. One second. Let me grab my oils model. She's in progress. Hey, Papa, what you got? Gonna, chew something up? I have to put a bikini on her because she's nude on top. So hold on, let me get some blue stuff. I'm working on the top anyway. Blue tack for the mini bikini. Let me cover up her bits. Putting a bikini on the model. So it's a Black Sun model. It's the Dragon's Daughter. It's the bust. And let's get in focus. And we'll just keep her there so you don't have any nudie bits. There you go. So I'm working with oils on this. And what oils are great for is glazing in colors smoothly. You're able to get some of these beautiful purple hues without getting as muddy as acrylics necessarily because you have transparency. You're able to keep, I actually zenith primed her, as you can tell, and this is a great technique for oils because they're transparent. A lot of them have a lot of transparency. So to get oils to cover, you have to add white. And so I was able to use the zenith to really, really emphasize the light and the shadow. So all of her skin tone is going to be the turquoise and kind of that color. And then her belly's going to be more cream. So yeah, because the medium. Okay, so with acrylic, Alquos, your resin, your base, your water-based paint that the pigment goes into, that base has resins in it, and those resins have coverage. Not as much coverage as the pigment does. The pigments you mix into an acrylic paint make a lot more impact on the coverage, but the base resin will influence that. Whereas oils, with oils, you've got oil, right? And oil doesn't really have coverage. It's really transparent. So you dispense with that 5 or 10% coverage that you get from the acrylic resin. Does that make sense? The resin is a particulate thing that, and particles will always block light. Whereas oil is oil, right? The blending is going to be outstanding because you've got a ton of time. The challenge with this was keeping the vibrancy of the color when I'm working with 3 different colors to do the model. So like there's a combo of 3 different colors here with the purple and the reddish brown and the cream, right? So you have a lot of time to work, but if you don't watch it, you could get some pigment interplay that can muddy you up. So knowing mixing, and even if it's acrylic mixing, it's going to help you because it's usually the same pigments. Yeah, and I thin these. I use the Scale Color Artist ones just because I wanted to pick up an oil set again, and then it was easy. It was a Kickstarter. So it was super fast to just pick up their set. So I work with the Scale Color Artist oils, and they have a pretty smooth consistency, but I still thin them to the same consistency that I work with my acrylics by adding a little bit of odorless mineral spirit. Correct. Yes. Everybody buys a giant tube of titanium white. Yep. Because that's the way you work with oils. And it has been since the days of, Renaissance. Like since they began doing oils. But yeah, that is why oils are more transparent than acrylics, because you dispense with the resin in the base, which it also adds coverage. That said, there are resins that don't add much coverage, like pure acrylic. 100% acrylic is really transparent because the particulate size is tiny. But even there, you'll add just a tiny bit of extra covering. So yeah, so that's how it all works. That's the why. Y'all know the why now. All right, so Dragon Daughter going away. I just ran out of, as I mentioned, it takes energy. It takes energy to execute and to learn and so I put aside Dragon Daughter for a while because I was just like, okay, I don't have the energy for oils right now. Plus, I'm still struggling with my dislike for solvents, to be honest, guys. Like, I got some of the orange-based solvent, but it's so stinky. Like, I open the top and it just fills the room and your head starts hurting. Like, I feel like I have to paint outside with it or somewhere with, like, a breeze blowing directly through the area, which isn't workable for me. And so then I'm, like, stuck going back to odorless mineral spirits, which also make my head hurt. And in general, I'm like, so I stopped. This is why I'm not a huge solvent fan. Like, it's not great for your health. Let's just face it. It is great to work it, but you run into that muddying thing. Like, the problem is the impatience, right? We're all used to being able to put the paint on and work over it right away because acrylics. With oils, because it stays long for so long, you'd be tempted to keep working on an area and trying to introduce other colors or trying to shade, and you'll end up, accidentally mixing 2 pigments that are going to go more to mud. You lose your clarity of color, and then you're kind of sad, and you have to take spirits and like scrape the whole, bunch of it off and start over. So oils make blending easier if you have the patience and you keep color theory and color mixing best practices in mind. I mean, oils are cool, but just do your due diligence before you jump in. Because you'll be so much happier with it if you learn a bit about mixing colors. Like, I was able to go back to oils after, God, how old am I again? Almost 30 years away from oils. And I was able to go back to them and get good effects on Dragon's Daughter not because I remembered oils from my old days, but because I understood color mixing and the way that pigments interact. And I understood what I was going to have to, I understood I was going to have to wait. I was going to have to be patient. So, but then I run into that solvent thing where I just really don't like them. And when it comes down to it, could I have gotten those same effects with acrylics? Yeah, guys, I could have. I wouldn't have to throw a matte finisher over the top to take the shine off, which I have to do with oils, which is the other annoying thing about oils. is that even the matte ones still have a bit of a shine, especially when you work them up a bit and you've got a thicker layer on there. So be aware, that's a thing. So essentially I had to buy a, I forget what it is, but it's kind of a sealing clear coat that will dull the surface. And that can be tricky to apply as well. So yeah, I would say oils are not for the faint of heart. And if you're really excited about them and you really, really want to become a miniature painter who works in them, just be aware that, get into the right mindset for it. Get excited about it. Understand that it's going to take some time, but that every little bit of practice is going to pay off in the end. And play. Let yourself just play. Don't start a model you really care about and then get really frustrated when you run into, roadblocks that you need to climb over. Yeah, you don't have to learn your color theory and your color mixing over again, though. But you will have to learn paint application slightly differently. You will be doing a lot of wet blending. So, for me, I love wet blending, but not everybody does. But yeah, it is a different beast. It's a different beast. Some skills translate and others do not. So you can see how doing that edge really tightens up that effect, right? From the kind of blah over here to the really tight looking over here. And the stippling, of course, is highlighting. Well, that's why you work on multiple models at once. It's like working with green stuff. Colorado, super dry. Yeah, I mean, yeah, like if you're trying to wet blend a smooth blending, of course I can see that. I've painted in really arid states before. I painted in Arizona. I painted in Santa Fe, which is also high desert. So it's got altitude like Colorado. I mean, probably the best way to blend if you are working in one of those areas is layering and glazing, which is time consuming though. But I mean, it's workable. It's just, it can be frustrating because of the dry time. I was able to make my paints work, but I had to learn to thin them a little bit more in my palette. So they essentially combat. You can't go with a small puddle if you're painting in like Colorado in a really arid climate. You have to do deeper puddles so that the paint stays of the right consistency. And yeah, blending on the miniature can be punishing because it really does dry right away. You might want to use thicker paint and more of it. Other people do have that same issue, of course. There are ways around it. But yeah. I mean, if you want to go and paint in oils and have that be your way around it, you could totally do that. You can also start the paint in acrylics and then go over it with oils. Though the other way, it doesn't really work because the hydrophobic nature of oils. But you can underpaint with acrylics. You can lay down basic colors with acrylics and then you can underpaint textures and all that kind of thing, and then you can go over it with the oils. In that case, you'd be working with the transparency. That's doable. Yeah, humidifiers do work. If you put the humidifier in the room with you, you will have better success. Or at least, it won't be totally bone dry anymore. But yeah, with my well palettes, as far as the paint drying in the palette, I just increase the size of my paint puddles. I use an extra drop or two. And then once I add the water, yes, it's going to still evaporate, but I usually have enough time. I just have to keep an eye on it. But the nature of my painting at this point is very much, when I dip the brush in, I notice if it's tacky. Like, it's kind of like my subconscious mind, like, watches for the tackiness. And when I get that kind of, like, dried edge, I'm like, oh, time to drop another drop of water in it. And so, but that's a habit that I've developed over the years of just keeping an eye on my paint consistency. And I'll notice right away if I start losing a paint consistency that enables me to layer. Yeah. Yeah, try the humidifier and see if it works. It has worked for other people. Um, it helps if your painting room is smaller, obviously, because you'll be able to, you'll be able to control it better than if you were in a big room. So I did some little lines here. Let's get close on this. So you can see I'm introducing like little cracks and lines and dashes along with my stippling to get a more natural stone look on this base. Resin, I'm not a wet palette user. I prefer the well. Like if you give me the choice, I will always go for the well. But the wet palette, I've used it in classes. Like every once in a while I make myself go back and use it. Because every time I use it, I get a little bit, like, oh, all right, I can actually paint the way I want to with this. But it's always a little harder for me because I do a lot of layering, I do a lot of glazing, I do a lot of thinned paint effects. And the wet palette isn't good for thinned paints, obviously, because they bleed through and they spread all over because capillary action. So I like to... Yeah, the thing with wells, Alcos, the thing with wells is you've gotta get that paint puddle. You've got to get it a decent sized paint puddle, because what you're doing with the well, as like a well user for decades now, what you're doing with the well is you want a deep puddle, because the deeper your paint puddle, the less surface area is exposed to the air and the slower your paint dries. So when I've got a big paint puddle in here, this one is probably 5 drops of paint plus a couple drops of water. It's probably about 7 drops. I like 7 or 8 drops. At least for my climate. But this stays wet. Like, I'll stream it stays wet. And if I notice it getting a little tacky, I can add a brush full of water and it's fine. So that's the key. And these are also, notice, very small wells. There's my finger. There's my thumb. They're about thumb-sized for me. And that's a smaller well than a lot of those big flower palettes. This is really what you want, because these small, deep wells lend themselves to using a smaller amount of paint, but still getting a deep well, a deep puddle. And I mean, I used to paint at Reaper Paint Club. I used to go and run it every weekend. It's a 4-hour paint club, and I would be able to keep my paint wet for 4 hours, no problem. I usually would have to add water halfway through, but I would be able to paint and keep my paint at the proper consistency for whatever I was doing for 4 hours, which is more time than most people spend painting, but not everybody. So. Right. Well, you paint the way you want to. I just wanted you to know, like, if you want to try the well again, this is what makes it work. Because maybe nobody explained that the first time around. So, that said, if you can work with the cardboard, and that's your working method, do it. Because that's the way that you've internalized, and that's what you are used to. It's only when you notice, like, if you notice there's a technique that you really can't achieve with that, or that makes it harder, then you might want to look at another palette. That said, I have an exemplar. I have a Game MV exemplar wet palette that right now is my favorite wet palette. I used it when I did the Mark Maskelyns class recently here. So I'm capable of using them. I just get frustrated with the wet palette, honestly, because I cannot control my paint. Like my paint consistency, I'm mixing up a new brush of it every time I reach for the paint. I hate that. I'm a control freak. I want to mix up my paint with exactly the color and exactly the consistency I want, and then I want to paint with it for like, half an hour, hour and a half. So, yeah. No, they usually you just set the lid on it. If you put a couple extra drops of water on top of your palette bits, they'll keep the paint wet without having a sealable. Yeah. Yeah, and being being a painter who's been painting at a pretty high level for a long time, I think we get more set in our ways. So I definitely know exactly like how I like to paint. I think we all do. And everybody's different, though. I mean, there are a lot more wet palette painters out there than there are well palette these days. I am like the lone champion. Although Kirill also uses the well for some things because it's better at thinned paint. So I always tell people try both. Come to understand why both of them work and what they are best at. So like understanding that to get your value out of the well palette, you want to make bigger paint puddles. Understanding that before you start the well. And then with the wet palette, understanding that it's going to be a lot more freeform, and you're going to have to like pretty much, if you want a thinned paint, you're going to have to remix every brushful. But it's also going to be a lot, it gives you a lot of freedom. It gets you a lot of artistry, mixing on the fly. It'll give you more painterly result. It really depends on your style. And you'll usually gravitate to one or the other depending on your style. Like the palette that you choose does somewhat dictate, just like every other choice you make in painting, will dictate your eventual painting style when you develop one. It'll influence it, right? Yeah, I always tell people to try both alcos. Understand why each one works and what each one is best at. Try both, and then as you paint, you will naturally gravitate toward the one that you enjoy, that suits your desired results better. Yeah. And there is really no right or wrong. There is only, this is the way I want to do it. Some people do seem to think that the well is bad, and those people typically, when I talk to them, just don't understand how to use it. And that's fair. That's how humans tend to be. But yeah, both of them have their roles. Sometimes I make myself paint with the wet just because if I wanted to block in a model really loose and sketchy like Luca does it, then the wet palette is a better tool for me because it switches my mindset. I stop being quite control freaky as I usually am. Because it's pretty evident when you look at my stuff that I paint very, very tight and precise. It's kind of what I enjoy doing. That and micro textures and really tiny details and stuff like that. That's what I go for. Underpainting and things like that. So that's what gives me joy as a painter, and that's what I gravitate toward. But I do try to mix it up every once in a while because I think it's healthy to push yourself to try different and new things as a painter so you don't stagnate. Oh yeah, for sure. Glazing medium. Honestly, resin, when I created Reaper Master Series paint, we added flow improvers to it off the bat specifically so that you would only need to thin with water. So I thin my paints with water or a mixture of water and flow improver if I feel like I need a little extra flow, a little extra surface tension break. But with MSP, usually not. Now, when I'm working with any other product, then it's definitely to the water flow improver mix because those other products don't have flow improver integrated. So if I'm working with Scale Color or I'm working with Chimera. Bye, crows. Thanks for stopping in. No, he's versatile. Zachariah is not fickle. He is versatile. He's a versatile painter. Also no spring chicken in the painting art. Just like myself, rather. But yeah. We've been around for a while. But yeah, that's one of my most fascinating topics is I love to see how different painters' like choices evolve into their painting styles, right? Like what has influenced a painting style? And how does that painting style turn out? Like, what brands do people like? What palette are they using? What sort of brush do they favor? It all adds up. And then their color choices, right? Color choices, how they treat light, how much they lean on light, or how much they don't, what's the emphasis in their painting. It says a lot about who you are. It's just fun. I always loved analyzing painting styles. There's a starter set, and there's also the Learn to Paint kits. So if you're an experienced painter resin, I'd say pick up the starter set. It's 11 colors. They're curated to be very useful. You get your black and your white and, stuff like that. Thank you, Quindy. Then there's the Learn to Paint kits if you're new. The 2 Learn to Paint kits together add up to a good set. It's like 22 colors, I think. And they don't repeat colors between them. But yeah, I'd say starter set. Or if you're a really experienced painter resin, just pick up the black, the white, and then like a couple of colors just that are your favorite colors. Like if you really, really love dark ultramarine blues, pick up ultramarine shadow, right? If you really, really love, kind of neutral deep reds, pick up dragon red, whatever. See, and airbrushing for me is always too much trouble. And that's another thing too that'll inform your style usually, right? Whether you use an airbrush. Because it's the tools you use, right? The tools you use have an impact. I'm just going to make that a little darker down there. But yeah, like I find the airbrush too much of a pain in the butt to set up and clean and break down. So I don't use it. Because the thing is, glazing has always been a big part of my painting, and so when I first learned to use an airbrush, the first thing that really went over my mind is I could do this with glazing. Rhonda had much the same conclusion, came to much the same conclusion in the class we took with Sergio. She's like, yeah, it's cool, but I could just use glazing, and I wouldn't have to set up and break down an airbrush. But it's like if you don't have like that, if you're not that confident with that tool or you just find it a pain in the butt, then the airbrush is much faster at it, relatively speaking. Yeah. Yeah, it can be useful, especially it gets you if you're trying to improve your lighting. Airbrushing can be very good since it lets you, kind of the direction of spray can reinforce those lighting choices. Most people I know use it to set up a model. They'll use it to establish like the shadow and then the mid and then the highlight, and then they'll just go in and elaborate. Unless it's a big model, you can do a lot more with an airbrush on a large model. So there are some very fine airbrushes that you could do a little bit more with, but that's really their strength, right? Yeah, I mean, if you're painting with Chimera, are you more toward using like the Pure Pigments resin? Because then I can give you a selection. Because if you want something that's more like Reaper's version. Yeah, but do you like that style of painting? Like, is that what you prefer? Or are those just good ways to like help punch up your color, and you're actually looking for paints that are not pure pigment, that are more ready-made blends that you don't have to mix? So essentially, if you feel like the Chimeras are a good set for pure pigments, so you probably don't need the MSP ones unless you're looking specifically to add to that, and trying to try a different set of bases and just like effects, right? I would probably get the starter set. You don't have to. The Reaper pure pigments are the clear brights, which are 9094 to 9099. It says clear red, clear purple, clear blue. Those are all single pigment or very close to it paints. The green had to be a mix because all we had was phthalo green, but I wanted it a little bit closer to the yellow end, so I did add a tiny bit of green shade yellow to that. Yeah, I saw that new. It was very ironic that they just dropped that Mark Masklin set since I just took his class, Wendy. But anyway, then there are some other colors that I would recommend if you wanted to get the Reaper version of Clear Brights. For instance, Lantern Yellow 9407. This is our orange shade yellow. And then there also are oxides. So they don't say clear, but they do say oxide. So the oxide yellow, red, and brown are also pure pigments. And they're all 9331, 332, 333. Yeah, okay, then maybe pick up Reaper's starter set. It'll still give you our black and white. Our white is really, really thinnable to transparency resin. Our white, I think, for thinnable white, if you're looking for the translucency, our white is amazing. You can thin it forever, and layer with it beautifully. It's what it's made for. It is my favorite color. I love it. Best white on the planet. If you're looking more for flat coverage or really pop sharp highlights, then go for the Chimera white. Or if you're looking at opacity to your clears, go for the Chimera white. But if you're looking to actually layer up highlights or add white to a color to create a highlight that needs to be layered and needs to be somewhat translucent, the pure white is going to work better for you. And you'll get that in the starter set. Our black is pretty good too. It's a nice matte black. But the other colors in there, there's no clears in there. So you'll get a decent selection of pretty strong, decent coverage colors that are blends. Resin, I actually might, if you want some interesting colors, I would recommend looking at the fast palettes. Is Gloom and Grave available again, Quindy? Like, if you wanted a bigger paint set, then I would say Bones. The Bones line, which is the 9401, 9402, 9403. So the Bones, instead of the core colors, I would say Bones. No, we don't have, Gloom and Grave, come on! What are these people doing at Reaper? Do I need to go back there and mix some freaking colors? Seriously. I left and look at where this place is going. Straight to the toilet. Just kidding. I am curmudgeonly today. I warned you guys at the start of the stream. But yes. So since Gloom and Grave is not available, that's my favorite fast palette. Yes, go yell at them. But I would say the Bones colors there's a really nice variety. The colors are nice and intense. They've got decent coverage. They use a lot of paint technology that was pretty new at the time. We're integrating new types of bases, and stuff like that. So the Bones paints are a good one. Even if you don't buy the Bones set, which is 54 colors, you could pare it down and just hand pick some of the more pretty colors that you liked better out of it. I love Tropical Blue, for example, and Runic Purple, and Styx Purple is a nice muted, darker purple, too. Runic Purple I use for a lot of stuff. So yeah, there's a lot of Bones colors. That Lantern Yellow that I just showed you is also part of the Bones line. So, yeah, I need to yell at them quite a bit, Twistonoma, I think. Maybe I just need to go a day in advance and mix the colors for Gloom and Grave and tell them to pump them. Yeah, Dungeon Dweller set does have some good colors in it as well, especially if you like muted colors. The Monster Colors set, which is this one, Monster Colors paint set, Reaper Bones Dungeon Dwellers. And the colors, I use them a lot. Like the Troll Hide is a really nice dark olive, and then you've got Goblin Skin. Kobold Skill is a beautiful brick red. The Ogre Skin is a nice it's a mixture of orange shade yellow and ochre. So, or oxide, I should say. So that's good. But yeah. Yeah, the High Seas Horror is also a good one. But yeah, the fast palettes are nice because they're just 6 color sets, and they're usually just interesting colors linked by a theme. I love the Gloom and Grave. I wish it was still available. But yeah, the Monster Colors paint set is good, and High Seas Horror has some interesting stuff in it. So yeah, the fast palettes if you're on a lower budget. If you want to splurge and you're on a bigger budget, I like the Bones. I always like the Bones set. There's some cool colors in Pathfinder too. That's our licensed paint line for Paizo. I use a few of those. I use all the freaking time. But that, again, it'll depend on your color preferences and what you're looking for. I also use Scale Color Artist and Chimera now that I'm not directly full-time employee of Reaper. The Scale Color Artist is the tube line from Scale 75. I really actually enjoy a lot of those colors. So we're just getting around and we're carrying around our... We've got a really nice effect on the stones here now. I think she looks really good. I've been debating Spell Dude, guys, and doing an effect the green effect that comes down here. So we'll see if I decide to do that later. It does need something to balance it out. So I might make the skull green and do a little thread of magical energy. Bone set. That's right. They were a couple different sets. I would say, yeah, the bone set 1 is going to give you more of the colors, quote unquote. Bone set 2 is going to give you neutrals, skin tones, and metallics. I would say the bone set 1 is the most useful. Oh, the Forster's favorites, yeah. But yeah, you get most of the pretty colors, and the oranges in Bones are really good resin. I feel like I use Fireball a lot, or Sunrise. And Volcanic is a good dark orange as well. But yeah, just pick up a few, pick up whatever, see if you like them, and then invest more. I would say just pick up the starter set, play around with it, see if you like the consistency. One thing to be aware of, resin, is that our paint is more fluid out the bottle than a lot of other brands. It's not goopy, so you do not need to thin it nearly as much. But yeah, otherwise, I don't use mediums to thin my paint unless I'm making a wash. I don't use them even when I'm doing glazing because I don't like the way it changes, the way the paint kind of skins over and the way it kind of feels and operates. I prefer just water. But at this point, I would also call myself an expert level glazer, and I know a lot of people really appreciate having a little help. So, I mean, glazing mediums aren't outright bad. If I do need to thin my paint down immensely and I need it to like hold together, then I would use just a little bit of matte medium or something added in. But otherwise, it's just like water and flow improver added if I'm using a paint line that's not Reaper. Yeah, that's what I was originally planning. Twisted Oma was exactly that idea. But I wanted to do a body instead of just the skull. And then I realized I didn't know if I had that much oomph for that model because it is very simple. Because it's all great and well and great to be ambitious, but I don't want to get ambitious about a model I really don't care about. It works much better when I get ambitious about a model I actually like. So I talked about edge highlighting in my PDF for the Patreon this month, and I did mention you could do it just freehand, but that you could, run into issues with it. And usually the issues that you're going to run into with it are going to be just that you've got an uneven line around the edge. But with stones, it doesn't matter if that's true, and so I don't have a problem doing it this way. If I wanted a more consistent line, that's when you use the side of your brush with only a little paint on it and you run that along the edges of things. You can also run the side of the tip along and get that same kind of even effect. So different ways to use edge highlighting. I should go and check on my tree. Except, well, it's almost the end of the stream. I'll go and check on my tree after this. See if he's gotten it planted yet. The chainsaw ended a while ago, so I know he finished taking out the lime tree. Literally. And I can put my fountain back in. Hopefully David likes the new tree. All right, so just doing that edge highlighting, and then we'll go back in with stippling and some shading and highlighting. I'll also bring in, because this is very monochrome right here, I will bring in some glazing, probably some dark greens and some browns to make the stone work a little bit more organic. Crowley, have fun with your meeting. Alcos, I used to play a lot of things, and I'm constantly kind of tempted to get back into Warhammer because much as Games Workshop is an evil empire, I do actually enjoy the game. And now that the new 40K is coming out and they're doing new Tyranids, I may get dragged back in. My old game that I liked the best from Games Workshop was Mordheim, which was their fantasy Necromunda equivalent with the campaign that you could play through and your characters leveled up and everything. We had so much fun running when I was working at Game Store back in Wisconsin. We had so much fun running Mordheim campaigns with our local gang. So I still have a very fond memory of Mordheim. The computer game, by the way, which you can get on Steam, feels just like, except that of course you're not painting miniatures, but it has the feel of Mordheim. And so, yeah, the new Nids look good. Okay, Space Wolf. Yeah, Space Marines. Airbrushing makes all the sense for Space Marines. I really love Space Wolves. I did have a Space Wolf army at one point. I like painting that blue-gray because it's actually very easy to shade and highlight blue-gray. Most muted colors are like that. I find, because you've already got a little bit of white in there, so when you're going in there with a lighter color to highlight, the blends can be very easy if you're trying to do a good job. I've painted a few Space Wolves in my time. One of them is on my website. Let me grab Logan here. Hold on. Or not Logan. Logan. It was Logan. I did a commission. And it was a lot. It was 65 hours, I'd say, on the Forge World one. Hold on, where's my gallery? We'll go past Soldier down to, there he is. Yeah, so that's a Forge World piece, of course. But he was super fun to do. And it was all non-metallic metal, so things like, here we'll get to the front. But yeah, it's all really, really nicely done. Those are all I guess I can't see the front very much. Here we go. But there's a lot. You can't really see the belt, which is one of my favorite things. But all the NMM took for freaking ever. But yeah, so that's my Logan. He was cool. It was super fun to paint him. I mean, I always love the wolf bits. And then there's the confrontation wolf in there. So I like wolves. I like wolves, and I cannot lie. I need to really toss a few more things up on my website, all things considered. Need to put Halfling Assassin up there. Alrighty. And I have a dog that's very wolfy looking. Although she's more of a dingo in her personality. She's a wild child. Did you hear me, Dingo? I heard her move back there. So I'm putting little nicks and stipples in here just to start getting into all this flat gray expanse here. Rescheduled to this week. Okay. But yeah, I'll just do little specks to break up the surface, give that gritty look. So it's all just paint texturing. But yeah, I do miss it. The problem with 40K is just finding a group that you like, right, to play with. I had a group back in Texas because a bunch of the guys at Reaper and ex-Reaper employees played. But out here, I haven't found a gang yet. Plus, you know, I've got so many freaking hobbies at this point. It's hard to find, like, when I'm really honest with myself, I could find time to paint the models, but could I find time to play, right? Like, the weekends are like the time that David and I have together, so unless I drag him into playing, which he really doesn't have a lot of interest. He likes to paint a lot more than he likes to play. But yeah, so it's the challenge is like finding the time to play and finding the right group. But maybe I can. I think we have a couple of painter friends who play, so maybe I could ask them where they play or get a group together through them. It does motivate me to actually paint stuff too. And I have the whole box for not only are Tyranids coming out, but I have the Sanctorum Guard for Sisters of Battle, which I love. Yeah, I tend to take a long time to paint an army because I really like the models to look good. I do use an abbreviated version of my method to do them, but it does take me a while. Yeah, that's really cool. Yeah, I had an orc army too. I've had a lot. I am a Xenos girl when it comes down to it. So, other than the Space Wolves, and the Sisters of Battle, all my armies have been non-Imperium. So, I started with Tyranids, and they were my love. That was 120 gaunts in that army. That was big. And then I did Space Orcs for a while after I moved down to Texas. Then the Horde army started just really overwhelming me, so I moved to Eldar. So Eldar was the last army I played, and I still have. I wanted to play Craft World. But I really wanted more styrene kits for the different aspect warriors, and they didn't really come through on that for me, so I was like, meh. But I do love Tyranids. Space Doggos! Yay! Okay, so there you go. So you paint probably at about my speed. Yeah, I mean, when you love an army, it's just fun to spend time making the models look good. So I'll paint a little faster when I do it, just because I want to get stuff done. But at the same time, I still like it to look, you know, decent, so that I'm happy with it. And my commander models are going to be painted to my competition level, like no question. Every army you start turns into a horde. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, 120 gaunts. That's when I got frustrated with 40k, because I was like, it took forever to move those units. And same with the orcs. You feel like you spend half the time just moving your units until everything gets pared down and killed. And I was kind of frustrated with that, so I kind of went away from the Horde army. The Eldar were a lot more forgiving there. I could move them very quickly, and there were much smaller units. But I do love Tyranids, so even if I don't pick up gaunts for an army, I may have to buy a couple of the new big models, because I do enjoy them. My problem with Tyranids has just been settling on one color scheme. Like, you have to pick a color scheme that you really enjoy. Justin always deserves yelling. Yes. Yeah, I get bored with batch painting too. That's kind of why I wanted to do the Aspect Warrior army, is because all of the Aspect Warriors can be different color schemes and, you know, stuff like that. And it's what it's supposed to be. So I figured I could do a unit of 5 Banshees, a unit of 5 X, a unit of 5 blah, you know, and at most 10. And that 5 models in one color scheme, and then I get to move on to something else. That's okay. I can do that. It's when I have to sit down and do like 10 to 20 that it gets a bit much. Although, that said, when I'm actively playing, I'm a lot more inspired to paint, even if it is batch. Tyranids are kind of attractive right now because I know that I could paint them like mostly with washes and glazes, and then spend just a little bit of time on them, and I'd probably be pretty happy. And that would be appealing, because then I could actually get an army put together pretty fast, all things considered. But I'd still need people to play with, so. We'll see. I'm going to buy the starting 40k box. David will probably take my marine bits to do some golden demon thing with. And I'll steal the Tyranids. And then at least I'll have the new rules and I can read through them. Alrighty. So that's looking pretty good. Games Workshop's a fun game. I mean, again, it's the people you play it with. Find a good group, Kodiak, and it can be really fun. I also really like to do campaigns. So playing a story-based campaign, if you can get people who are up for it. And I like to start with, everybody starts with just 500 points. Because that way we can all, like, we did that at the old place. Everybody was pretty much starting up a new army, or most people were. And it lets you learn your army from the ground up to just start with like a commander and 2 units and then just add to your army every week or every second week, however often you're playing, right? I really like that method of kind of learning how to play the game and how to play your army when you're starting something new. So if you find a group, like, see if they're up for that, because yeah, exactly. If you find some good people. Yeah, NIDs are fun to paint if nothing else. I mean, you could experiment. You could just use them for models that you just play with, like experiment with new paints and new colors and new techniques on. But yeah, since we're still doing Golden Demons, since David is, I think, planning to go every year, I might do some NIDs. I'm always frustrated when they're... In the past 2 years, I've been very frustrated at the lack of Tyranids. Relative lack of Tyranids in Golden Demon. Alright, there we go. Yay! We're good and we're done! Yay! It just took us a while. And now we just need to add some glazes of color and she'll be good. All your NID hitting buddies. Aww. That's a bummer, Kerniko. And they're never going to touch them. They're never going to play with them. So they're going to be sad little NIDs. Sad little NIDs. But yeah, she's turned out very, very well. Far better than I ever dreamed she would turn out, actually. So yeah. Sweet. I'm happy. Quindy's happy because she got to stare at her for another stream. We're going to add some grass. We're going to add some colors. We'll do that things. While I do that, I'll have more time to think about Evil Dude and think about how I really want to do his coloration and how he's going to move onward from there. We do have a lot of room for a freehand on his back if we want to do that, so we'll think about that. But yeah, so it gives us some time. Okay, everybody. So, oh yeah. Yeah, using a Carnifex as a demon. Oh, that would be fantastic. And it makes sense. Yeah, I bet that freaked out the players. Okay, so tomorrow for our Friday stream, which is Diablo Day, by the way. Anybody else playing? David, it's their server slam weekend, so they're trying to get as many people playing Diablo as they can so they can figure out what their server load is like. So I decided to try it out. See if I wanted to actually buy the game, which is not cheap. So tomorrow we're back to Mouseling. But yeah, soon I get to be a Diablo Widow because David is totally going in for it. So we did Metallics last time and played with that. And we can finish up our Brass Metallics tomorrow, I'm thinking, and maybe block in some colors on his clothes to get that color composition ironed out and stuff like that. So Giant Mouseling is coming along. Thinking of Diablo, huh? Oh, yep. That's fair. Okay, well, cool, guys. I will be back with Mouseling tomorrow. Stretch. Stretch, because you've been sitting here staring at me for an hour and a half. Yes, and Crafty Creative with Josh is today, and I am going to go and play with my Kiki, although I might not be able to until the tree is in, so I'll have to go check on it. All right, guys, have a great one, and I'll see you tomorrow morning. Bye-bye.